Well, good morning, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day to each and every one of you. And I wish you nothing but unconditional and universal love. And that goes for every single sign. And well, by the end of the show, I'm going to sing a love song for all the Aquarians out there who feel so misunderstood. And I'm going to pour out my feelings for the most misunderstood sign in the zodiac. Maybe I'll do that every month. I'll have a love song for every sign just to make sure that you understand that as an astrologer, I get you, that I understand you. And I will carve out a small piece of devotion so that nobody feels left out. Everybody gets a medal. All right, what's happening? It's Robert Phoenix, and it's the Astro Weather. So yesterday, big explosion in, where was it? Iran? Where was that big explosion? Big pipeline explosion happening yesterday. We talked about the explosive energy, and lo and behold, it was pretty significant. So right here, it says Iran gas pipeline caused by terrorist attacks, authorities say. Just those ubiquitous terrorists. A huge explosion. It ruptured a gas pipeline near Burjan city in Iran's Chahar Mahal and Bakhtiari province in the early hours of Wednesday, with images on social media showing an inferno lighting up the night sky. Iran's gas management center said the explosion was caused by terrorist attacks, state-linked IRNA reported. So there you go. Iran produces about 1 billion cubic meters of gas a day. It has some of the largest proven reserves in the world at about 30 trillion cubic meters, as well as a large network of pipelines also used to export gas to Iraq and Turkey. A branch of the Iran gas trunk line, also known as EGOT, runs near the site of the blast, but there was no word on whether it had been damaged. Industrial accidents in Iran are common, with decades of sanctions and mismanagement having left much of the country's infrastructure in a state of disrepair. So there you go. We did have an explosive moment on the world stage, and all that is all, it's all fifth generation warfare, asymmetric, and it's happening all around us. So why don't we jump into the chart today? Let's do that. Let's make that happen. Whoa. Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? This is it. Okay, here we go. By the way, I hope everybody is having a fantastic experience, no matter where you are in your day or your night. And I sincerely wish that for everyone. Okay, here we go. All right. It's all about the weather. Mars has crossed over Pluto now, and we are in the realm of reckless abandon. Just a little bit, right? Like this is edgy energy, this Mars-Pluto energy. And of course, there's seismic stuff happening. Like the closer Mars moves into this square with Uranus, the closer we get into major seismic happenings. Somebody brought up like solar flares, and I think everything is connected. So whatever is going on with the sun is connected to our consciousness. So if we are in a state of disruption or whatever kind of massive biomorphic field we create, it's connected to everything, including the sun. And the sun, as a result of that, has its own response to whatever it is that we in general are generating. So if we are in a state of disturbance, then the sun more than likely will be in a state of some degree of disturbance. And then as a result, the ground beneath our feet, perhaps as a result of solar flares, uh, you know, whatever is being emitted, high radiation, gamma stuff off the perceivable spectrum, all that stuff, right? Then interpenetrates our consciousness and our world as well. So it's all connected. That said, there's also technology that can cause earthquakes. Now we're into Aquarius, right? I mean, they've been talking about earthquake machines for a very, very long time, and we have even covered situations like this, going all the way back to things like the San Francisco earthquake in 1906 and the fire, and how it's just so convenient that there was this entire city and this infrastructure that was involved that, looking back on it, seems almost impossible and not plausible when it comes to the construction of the city during that time. And of course, now we're talking about things like Tartaria, and there are plenty of channels out there that cover this, including John Levi. If you haven't seen his channel, I highly recommend it. What caused that? Right? What caused things like the melting? Right? When you see, it's almost as if these much older structures are completely melted and they sort of look like mountains, but they're not. You know, was that a byproduct of the sun? Was that a byproduct of, you know, some technology that all of a sudden was on a time scale, or who knows, right? I mean, but there's more questions than there are answers. And here with Aquarius, we get into that territory, right? It has to do in a lot of ways with the scientific manipulation of our reality, and Aquarius rules science. So whether it's earthquake machines, or, you know, even something as egregious as, and a lot of people will say, well, this is just a byproduct of contrails. You know, the checkerboard patterns in our sky, that's very Aquarian, right? Literally, it descends from the sky. You know, instead of the urn that's being poured out and emptied out, it's more like a sifter that eventually drops down into our reality, or our third dimensional world on just Earth itself, right? So when we look at Aquarius, there is this kind of scientific theme that runs through Aquarius. Yesterday we talked about William Shockley, and the co-inventor of the transistor, and in the effect that he's had on modern technology. We don't have the 1960s, we don't have miniaturization without somebody like William Shockley, right? So when we see this in the Mars-Pluto conjunction, right, we can look at this as an astrological celestial influence. And we also have to understand that Aquarius does provide the network. It does provide the technology in a lot of ways to either make our world better or make our world not so good, right? I mean, everything is kind of neutral, right? Everything is kind of neutral until we attach our consciousness to it and we ascribe an intention to that thing. But even then, some of the best intentions don't always go so well. So the energy is still very aggressive. It's really aggressive. And as Mars continues to move more in square with Jupiter, it's only going to get more aggressive, right? It's also, I've been reading a lot about squatters lately, and it seems to be this theme that is coming up in all these different little platforms, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or Twitter. And when I see a Mars Jupiter square, it feels a lot like this squatter energy, right? Like, well, there's no such thing as property rights, which is a kind of, again, a very Aquarian theme. Nobody owns anything. Well, how could you own something? That's colonialist, or right. I mean, that's kind of, there's that kind of idea behind this communitarianism, which is, again, a very Aquarian kind of theme. I'm just calling it as I see it, right? And Taurus is all about property in your home and land. So we're going to see more and more, because once these things go viral, guess what's going to happen? We live in a fucking copycat universe. You're going to see all these people now looking at vacant houses and saying, well, shit, I can do that, right? And then good luck getting them out because of squatters' rights, eminent domain, and it can really be costly to somebody who has a rental property trying to get somebody out of your home. Very costly. And like, you could spend upwards of $10,000, $20,000 in legal fees and lawyers. And usually what happens is that they'll pay the people to go away. They'll pay them to go away. So I would say that this Mars Jupiter square has a lot to do with that. And now we have this flux of migrants. By the way, apparently they're starting to come back to Texas now. Eric Adams is shipping people back to Texas. He's had enough, right? So again, this is kind of this very Aquarian sort of, it's like NIMBY, not in my backyard. Yeah, okay, here you go. Go over here, and they've got plenty of public resources for you over here, and lots of land too, right? So this is going to be a very interesting transit. It's all about turf wars. It's all about turf wars. It's all about resources. And again, I'm just calling it as I see it here, okay? Mars in Aquarius could be very good at justifying something for the greater good. Well, why should you own that? What's ownership anyway? Right? We're going to hear more and more about this. We're going to see more and more of these scenarios, and very aggressive scenarios. Extremely. When I see Mars in Aquarius, I get anarchy. Look, Johnny Rotten, singer of the Sex Pistols, right? What was his famous song? Anarchy in the UK. He basically becomes this icon of punk rock. He's an Aquarian. So Mars in Aquarius is anarchic, which isn't always bad. I'm not saying anarchy is a bad thing or a good thing. There's probably, if you listen to Michael Malice, it's fucking utopia. But if you follow Antifa, right, it is an appetite for destruction. So that, to me, Mars in Aquarius is very anarchic. And as it moves closer into this square with Jupiter, we're going to see more and more of it. And I can see the destruction of property, the seizing of property. Okay, just a heads up. If you are a property owner and you are trying to rent out one of your homes, do not leave it unoccupied. Pay somebody to be in that house, because this is really the linchpin as to how people are getting it and seizing property for months on end. So I'm just letting you know. This is part of my job. I'm your canary in the coal mine. I also feel like that there is, on a personal level, again, Mars and Pluto is super aggressive, really aggressive. I even indulged in a little bit last night on Twitter with a Johnny Cash image, where he's got the middle finger, and I was flipping off Johnny was flipping off a lot of people I think needed to be flipped off. Not anybody, nice or personal, but, Bill Gates kind of at the top of the list. But this is very aggressive energy. Very, very aggressive energy. You know, and sometimes when we get into like a Mars Jupiter square, we can overcompensate. You know, anytime you get into squares with Jupiter, there's this potential for overcompensation, overdoing things. You know, it's kind of the gambler square. And sometimes gambling and risks pay off, and sometimes you walk away and your pockets are empty. Um, that's not to say you should be risk averse. Just know what you're doing. You know, a Mars Jupiter square, if you're using analytics and data, could be very good for you. Next thing you know, you can run the table, or you could benefit from your aggressive position. And clearly, this is an aggressive position with the Mars Pluto conjunction. By the way, I did put the link for Boxcast in the show notes. So if there's Tom or somebody in chat, can grab that and put it in chat, so it's there. And because I was a good curator of my content last night, and I did it all before I went to bed. And so this is part of my nightly ritual. And some nights, you know, I'm human. But it's there, so please join us. And we're going to talk about Mayorkas, who was impeached yesterday. And it was a very interesting kind of number for impeachment. It was 214 to 213. So yesterday was 213 and today is 214. So some interesting numerological symbolism with Mayorkas. We'll talk about that today. Okay, so here we go. Mercury is also in Aquarius, and here we go, squaring off against Uranus, and that square is getting tighter and tighter. And you know, there are people who are ready to just snap, right? Snap and crack it off. And sometimes, hey, look, you got to get shit off your chest. Get it off your chest, right? As long as you're, I mean, as long as you're not doing bodily harm to somebody, I mean, get it off your chest. But the other thing too with that is that, you know, if you're going to do that, then you should be ready to receive the heat back. That's all. That's the Mercury Uranus square, right? I mean, and the good news is that theoretically with Aquarius, you should not be able to take things that personally. But I don't think that that's the case now because of these hard squares. Like people they're edgy. This is edgy energy. It's really edgy energy. And is it going to be resolved when we move into passive Pisces? Maybe a little bit, but you know, we're kind of on this continuum right now. So whatever we're going through with Aquarius bleeds over into Pisces, and then we're dealing with sort of the aftermath of what's happening now. The sun is starting to move past Uranus, but it's still in a square, right? Let's talk about I talked about this thing with the highway yesterday, and the metaphor of getting off the highway. And there were people that averted some accidents. There were people that actually were paying attention. And I think it was somebody on Twitter who said, before you did your stream, I was in my car and I let out a primal scream because apparently they had gotten into a bit of a tiff with their husband or something like that, right? So they were already there. They were already in the energy. And so when we get into this really jagged, almost bloody squares going on with these fixed planets, you've got to dislodge the energy. And I would say, dislodge it in a way that could be productive. But sometimes, look, shit happens, and let the chips fall as they may. And then you deal with it afterwards. Or maybe you're dealing with that with another person. Okay, well, that's how you feel. I really feel like the key to this period that we're in, and especially this Mars cycle, is all about how we respond to threat. whatever the threat is, the threat to our ego, the threat to our status, the threat to our position, whatever, right? It's all about how we respond. And this is, these squares are dramatic response. Dramatic response. So I would say, as maybe an alternative course of action, instead of a dramatic reaction, why don't you have a powerful sense of initiation and production? This is what I would encourage in people. If there's something about the world that you don't like, change it. If there's something about somebody's approach or whatever they're doing and you don't like it, change it. Create your own platform. Create your own fill in the blank, right? Because this is really what this energy is about. Like, squares can be dynamic. They're supposed to be dynamic. They're supposed to make you uncomfortable. But what are you doing with the energy? Are you just going to lash out and say, fuck you? Maybe that's the beginning. Maybe that's the fire starter. Maybe that's the catalyst. And this is really where we get into this whole Aquarian piece, which is, hey, if you don't like the world or you don't like your world, then do something about it. Do something about it. Take a revolutionary approach to your own experience. This is all about breaking up patterns. All about breaking up patterns. And we all have patterns. We're all entrenched in some ways. So it's good to kind of look at what you're doing. Well, I do this every fucking day. Well, maybe I shouldn't do this every day. Maybe I need to do something different. Maybe I need to do nothing at all, right? You need to just figure out where you are in that continuum. So when we get into Aquarius, and we're deep into it, we've only got, 5 more days of the sun in Aquarius. The energy becomes very different in Pisces, right? It's more dissipative and kind of more kind of going with the flow, right? This is not go with the flow energy. I can tell you that right now. And we're 3 days, was it about 4 days away from Venus joining the party. And, all this Aquarian energy hitting every single aspect of our lives, right? Whether you're an Aquarian or not, like the sun is individuality. Mercury is how we think, how we communicate. Mars is how we act. Pluto is the deepest stratum of resources and the psychological and psychic foundation of the world that we live in and inhabit. And Venus is our relationships. And all those planets now are coming into this wave. And so they're all about change. As far as the Valentine's Day goes, I think there could be some really good makeup sex today, right? Because it's going to be really argumentative. But now you slide into that nice little sextile there, right? A little sextile energy with Venus and Neptune. It's like, get all, hot and bothered and right. And then, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, let's make it better. Oh, I love you too. I love you. Put a little spice in your life, right? Little spice in your life. Let's talk about the moon, because the moon is moving into Taurus later today, which I think is really good for Valentine's Day. You get that Taurus moon conjuncting Jupiter, and it's like a nice meal, right? Like a nice, triple layer, chocolate cake, gluten-free, of course, right? That's what we're talking about here. It's okay, right? You can kind of get into it. Even Saturn says, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead. Saturn's about, go ahead. Have another slice. Right? So there is this kind of, there's a bit of indulgence today, and it's Valentine's Day. You should be a little indulgent. I mean, look, I'm not a big Hallmark holiday person, but God forbid you forget flowers on Valentine's Day. Like, it's one of those boxes that you just have to check. And it's like, I'm not a big Hallmark holiday guy. Neither am I. Oh, good. Why are you upset? Well, you didn't give me any flowers. Right? So check the box. Or just check the box. That's all I'm saying. And the other thing too is that, like, this might also have to do with overspending a little bit. And what the hell, right? We have money for a while. You may as well have a good moment, a good meal. Just watch out for the uber aggressive waiter. Most of the time, the service is pretty good, I think. A tip of the cap to all the service people out there. Yeah, interesting energy for sure. It's dynamic, it's tense, it's intense. There is some potential for resolution, right? Bend a little bit. You can kind of maybe see what other people are going through. Like, there's that potential here with Venus Neptune sextile. It's a bit redemptive. And then, permission for some indulgence. Go out, have a good meal, enjoy it, right? Like, we live in this third dimension, and there's some beautiful things about it. And, it's not a bad thing to take it in every now and then and say, God, this is really good. This is really good. And give thanks too, because we're in a part of the world, or if you're listening to this and you're in a part of the world that allows you to indulge in these sorts of things, where maybe in other parts of the world it's not so good. Give thanks for that. Give thanks for that. Just take a little moment out of your meal, and it doesn't even have to be dramatic. Just say, I'm pretty damn fortunate to have this right here, right now. And that's all you got to do. All you got to do. Just a little moment of awareness, and then start stuffing your face. So there you go. That's, to me, this is the crux of this astro weather. We're in it, right? We're in a volatile phase. And that volatility it's out there as well, right? It's out there in governance, it's out there in business, it's out there in finance. Like, there's just so much volatility, like sparking and arcing and crackling in the atmosphere. And remember, though, it's energy too, right? And energy is energy, and you can use it. There was this guy that I used to listen to back when I was in high school and in college. And I don't know if he's still around. He may have passed away. He was on this radio station called KSAN, and his name was Scoop Nisker. And he would do these kind of interesting alternative news reports. And after he would give his report, he would say, and remember, if you don't like the news, go out and make some of your own. And that's how I'll end this part of Astro Weather, with a nod to Scoop Nisker. Okay, let's talk about our star of the day, our True Hemp Science star of the day. Let me get my banner up here so you guys can get your True Hemp. Remember, this is the I think this might be the last day for the Love is Water. What is it? Love is Water. I got to get this right. I can't fumble the ball here with let's see. Let's do this. Hold on. Let's see. So Love is Water, all caps, at True Hemp Science. And he's got these really cool nano water emulsified elixirs. They're awesome. So all you got to do is type in "love is water" and all caps, and you get 15% off. And if you get a bundle of 4, you get 25% off. And of course, if you just want to get $100 worth of CBD products, 15 mins, 15 MINS is your code to get free goodies. Okay, so here's your True Hemp Science star of the day. It's Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes. Now, growing up watching sports, the two guys that were always there were 4 guys. I lived in California. In football, there were always 4 coaches that you were aware of. 5. So there was Bo Schembechler at Michigan, Joe Paterno at Penn State, Ara Parsegian at Notre Dame, Paul Bear Bryant at Alabama, and Woody Hayes at Ohio State. And growing up in California, a lot of these guys seemed like they were, petty tyrants, dictators of a banana republic, right? I mean, these guys were larger than life. And Woody Hayes was one of those guys, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? That was his philosophy with football. And you can tell, right, how intense he is because he has Pluto conjunct his midheaven. And the midheaven is the point of entry to the world, right? And it's really cresting at the top of his chart. And what's going on here, he's got a sun trine to Pluto. His sun is in the 5th house, which is all about sports, right? Sports and games and pastimes. And that's what Woody Hayes is. He's a coach, right? And he's a guy that had, for a long time, immense authority. Like, this dude owned the state of Ohio for a long time. He was one of these gods of college football. And he was not an overly sentimental person. He has this Moon-Saturn conjunction. And he's not going to treat his players like how they're treated today. And this is also a very complex relationship with the mother, by the way. Now, it could also represent, well, the mother and the father have shaped his kind of moral code and moral fiber. And that would be true, right? Because that's what the 9th house represents. It's where we get our moral codes from, is the 9th house. So the mother and the father both play a pretty significant role. But they're also, you could tell, like, very tough. Like, they were tough on him. That's where you get the square. Like, this is like, okay, well, yeah, you're going to be tough on me. Well, I'm going to be tough on other people. And you can just see this in the chart, right? You can just see it right there. And there's not a lot of sentimentality in Woody Hayes' chart. There's just not a lot of sentimentality. He's got that Neptune in Cancer. I think ultimately the Neptune in Cancer is his undoing, which I'll talk about. And it's this opposition with Mars. And, even Mars in the 4th house, right? Like, living under almost, like military-like conditions in the home. Woody Hayes was born in 1913, which is the year that the Federal Reserve and World War I and all this stuff is starting, right? It's like, it's a big deal. And he's kind of born into this revolutionary time. And 1913 is a revolutionary time. It's a game-changing year, to use a football metaphor. And a lot of his methods worked. When you have a Mars Moon trine and a Mars Saturn trine, right, you're able to kind of, run the game in a lot of ways. And even though there were times where, he was considered to be, that's what I'm looking for, authoritarian would be putting it lightly, he was successful. And here's the weird thing about Woody Hayes. Invariably, I would go onto YouTube and well, let me learn more about this person. And I actually went through a Woody Hayes phase. And some of the things that he said, either through some kind of interview, which was quasi-motivational, or there was this one time when he was actually a commentator on a football, because they'll do that, right? They'll have football coaches commentate on games, even though they're like still working for Ohio State or Michigan or whatever. And he said something that was so candid and so, in some ways, profound about what was going on in the game. It was like, holy shit. Like, this guy is not just dialing it in. It was like he was talking about the officiating or something in a way that was clearly true. Clearly true. And you can just tell, I think, who was the announcer? Like Brett Musburger or something like that. They didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't angry. It was like revelatory. And then and I had seen some of his other videos where he was talking about his players and what he wants out of his players and what he wants, his players to do and accomplish in life. It was pretty fucking motivational. So it changed my perception of Woody Hayes in a lot of ways, because, again, living in California, a lot of these guys are just portrayed as these, kind of authoritarian oafs. And when I went a few layers deeper on him, it was like, this is a complex man. And he understood things in a way that made him successful. And this is a guy that if he wanted to, he could have been very good in politics. He could have been a senator from Ohio. He could have been governor of Ohio. And with that Pluto near his midheaven, he could have been a pretty powerful, agent of change. He's got a chart for it. Like, he could have been a precursor to like Tommy Tuberville, who's a middling coach, is now a senator, right? Or congressman, I forget what he is. But Woody Hayes' downfall is the Mars-Neptune opposition right here. That's his downfall. There was a guy by the name of Charlie Bauman, and Clemson was playing Ohio State in a bowl game. And it wasn't like a national championship game or something, but it was one of those bowl games where, you get an attaboy if you win. And Charlie Bauman had intercepted a pass. And Charlie Bauman was like nose guard or something. And he was running down the field, and Woody Hayes basically jumped off the sideline and horse collared him. And bounce. It was like, that was it. He was done. He was done. And he had already kind of had this, acquired this reputation of being on the edge. He went over the edge. Woody went over the edge. To me, that's the Mars-Neptune opposition, right? Like, he just couldn't fucking control himself. Or Woody. And that's when Earl Bruce took over. And Earl was a pretty good coach. He coached under Woody Hayes. But like the Mars served him for a very long period of time until it didn't. Until he decided to put himself into the game and take out Charlie Bauman, the nose guard from Clemson, who put an end to Woody Hayes' career. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that day that, if they could, they probably would have bought Charlie Bauman a drink, because Woody Hayes was a bastard. But again, right, when you go through and you kind of look at the body of work and you hear what the dude says, it's like, wow, he was a bastard, but he was also an interesting bastard, and somebody who had perhaps a point of view that at that time a lot of people just did not understand. And maybe that also goes into this whole idea of being an Aquarian and feeling misunderstood. I was going to sing a song about Aquarians. It was something like this. Something like, oh, dear Aquarians, we love you contrarians. Whether you're Rosa Parks on a bus or Johnny Lydon making a fuss, You're a little extreme, but hey, that's your dream. And we appreciate each and every one of you on this day. Oh, you Aquarians, you goddamn contrarians. Our life would be boring without you. At the end of the day, someday we'll all go away. And whether you're an Aquarian or a Piscean or a Sagittarian, we'll be pushing up. Agrarian? It's all off the cuff. Anyway, Aquarius, we love you. Take care. That's Astro Weather. We'll be over on 15 Minutes of Flame. Link in the description. Oh, somebody brought up something about my mic. Let me just tell you, I have been looking at mics. Now, there are things that have to be put into place before I can get a mic, which means, so for instance, let me just give you an example here. I have this computer on a particular stand. Now, in order for me to get a boom mic, which has a clip, I got to get a different thing for the computer, which is fine. So there are processes involved here. And I'm going to get one of those really fucking cool mics, right? I'm going to get a cool fucking mic. And I'll have rich baritone responses and all that stuff. Anyway, thank you for reminding me about the mic. It does need to change. All right, that's it. Come join us over on 15 Minutes. Please hit like, subscribe, share. Want to buy me a cup of coffee? There's a link in there as well. Take care. Bye for now.